So I think one is to do with just the Uberization, the resource exchange itself. So does the talent OS, as we call it, enable me to see who's available talent marketplace, so it's internally, externally, and pull and drag to the skill match. AI is playing a big role here.
I think the skill gap analysis is the biggest thing
By far,
enterprises can learn.
by far today, biggest contribution of AI to HR, in my opinion, is this job skill match or task skill match to the people. To be able to go through someone's experiences, not just their given CV, but let's say their online presence and all of it put together, and to actually build a picture to say, this is what it is, and this matches your task requirement by so much percentage is probably the biggest thing it's actually current. And that can now be automated, right? As we know. Everyone thinks they can do HR. We're all leaders, we all have peers. So we all can draw a structure for our peers. We all interview for our peers. So we all think that, okay, this is what HR does. So the shift has been thanks to some very remarkable HR leaders and thought leaders in the space of HR who made that shift happen over many years. I was thankfully, even 13 years back when I started, the shift had already started happening big time. I was very lucky to grow under the HR leaders who made serious business shifts through people models.
Hello and welcome to HR Off the Record, a podcast series brought to you by Strong, and this time from the city of gold, Dubai. We created this show to humanize the people inside the boardroom, to have one-on-one conversations on strategy, people, and what keeps the business ticking. Join us as we chat with some incredible business and people leaders on topics that are shaping up the business and the workplace of today. And today, I'm excited, glad, pleased to welcome a dear friend and a director of business consulting and people advisory, Nishanth Krishnan from Thornton. Nishanth, Nish, as we fondly call him, is a fantastic human being, a transformation leader with 30 years of experience in consulting across retail, manufacturing, family-run conglomerates, and much more. Nishanth has worked across clients in India, UAE, Hong Kong, and UK, with some of the biggest names in the transformational journey. Thanks for being with us, Nishanth.
Thank you for having me.
And letting us pick your brain.
Thank you so much. This is a great opportunity. How are you?
I'm good. The coffee was even better. And the weather in Dubai, fortunately, is
Getting much better.
much better. So let's warm up a little, Nishanth. Why don't you tell us something about you?
Good.
What would be the top 5 conversational starters if somebody gets to meet you?
Yeah.
And let's get to know you beyond the boardroom.
No, sure. I think it's an interesting question to start off. We don't get to share a lot about yourselves except in interviews sometimes, job interviews. And it so happened that I actually got asked the same question when I was applying for this role in Thornton, which was, can you say something that's not on your CV? So I've always tried to be on the creative side of things. Always been keen on writing, I also rap on the side. I make music videos and I used to do a lot of that earlier. I've restarted doing some of that now. More importantly, I gone through a huge transformational journey at a personal level in terms of, moving away from the very glitzy party side of life to trying to focus on health and self-preservation and some of the longer term things and which matter, thanks to a lot of good people who actually helped me do this and guided me in this light. And that's been the real story for me at a personal level for the last 2 years, 3 years, when I've tried to deliberately move and do healthier things on a day-to-day basis. It's very tough. Just like any organizational transformation, it actually takes, it's continuous process. There's no end to it. It's not like you've done and now you're suddenly always going to be healthy. It's a lifelong thing. And that's what I actually mentioned in the Grand Content interview as well. And I guess that's what we content select.
I guess it was like then and it will be like now.
Yeah.
Sorry, thank you. So, every journey has milestones.
Yep.
What were yours? What were your key landmarks, key points in your life which shaped who you are today?
So, well, I think it started off with childhood. My father was in the military engineering services in India, so every 2 years we would actually move out of the city that we would live in. So one day I'm learning karate, the next day I'm learning keyboard, and suddenly it's chess, so on and so forth. So just that fact that you can pick new things and new friends. There was a brief time before internet came. So I mean, internet came by the time I was in school, but there was a brief moment when we used to write inland letters to our friends who sometimes there would be no response. We wouldn't know what happened. So making new friends was the biggest kind of thing in the big milestones in my early years. Where essentially that's really carried on now because you need new clients, new teams all the time in consulting, and that actually works. But other than that, I think it was a pretty standard Indian upbringing in terms of saying, okay, engineering is the way to go. It's almost like school. So everyone did it. I also did it. But I was able to start picking up a few longer term learning. So I got introduced to concepts like enlightenment and some of those spiritual ideas very early. Um, but I may have lost a lot of that now. I kind of picked up the fact that in anything you look at the longer term, the bigger picture. So engineering for me was all about problem solving. I went out to do an MBA right after because I really didn't get the technicalities of engineering but very well, and MBA in HR. And there again, the real thinking was all about longer term, team building, collaboration, problem solving, but with a strategy in mind. So engineering was see a problem, solve it. MBA was all about see the problem, but solve the bigger issue that lies behind that problem. So, that's how I see a lot of the key learnings in the early stages. After that, I obviously had a 13-year corporate journey which is going on, and I think each organization that I worked for, there was a very different journey. And after moving into consulting from HR, every project and every client is a steep learning curve, which is what I tell a lot of our people in consulting, that this is what the career offers in terms of a very steep learning curve. What your colleagues are learning deep about a particular job or a particular industry for years, you only get sometimes 2 months to do.
So how did this? That's interesting. I mean, given I'm a business graduate too, and consulting was something which was an offer for me when I started my career. And letting you in on an inside joke, we've always thought the consultants are folks with Excel sheets and DVDs,
Yeah.
and an eye on your money pie, and they were just dependent,
Right.
giving you advice that you could have
Done yourself.
than yourself.
Yeah.
But jokes apart, how did consulting start? Consulting itself has evolved so much in the recent years. Looking at the business scenarios, do give us a insight into how the world of consulting operates today.
I'm glad you asked that question because this is the standard comment anyone makes. Like, oh, you're a consultant, see the watch, tell me the time. Classic jokes from way beyond. Even before Google existed, this is what consultants were known to. It's funny, but consulting is actually one of the oldest professions in the world, or professional services for that matter, right? For me, consulting happened after 3-4 years in HR, in core HR, where actually the strongest of my learnings still come from the way you understand an organization or you feel the symbols of an organization, what you do with it, because we now apply it to clients. But consulting happened through a consultant. So I was the client for a consultant who would come in and work with us. But he felt I was good enough to be in his team because he saw those traits. Now, I think to your question, consulting has really, really evolved in the last 10 years that I've worked in it. When I was a junior member, a consultant, all that we were really asked to do was what you said, which is really make something look nice, speak about it, get the kind of fees that's required for that, and move on. But very soon, this had started changing already. So consulting existed for long before I joined, and that's when this was happening. But in my time, it's all about now the skin in the game. It's really about getting things done. And there is no incentive if you don't do it. Today, it's very much about implementation, transformation. And the difference between just strategy and transformation is the fact that you actually need to show value. And you need to track that, be it a financial or non-financial KPI. So, and it's rapidly changed. And I've seen consultants, leaders who I work with closely evolve, get that into their practice. So, mostly now projects, timelines are longer. We go in, we try and get things done, we make change happen and show that changes happen through numbers. That's true.
I think this is a great segue to knowing more about Brand Thoughtful. What do you guys do in the field of skills, talents, assessments, and creating, helping organizations transform their HR?
Absolutely. So I think I'll start a step before even the HR component and probably speak of the firm as a whole. I mean, it's a very, very internationally very well-known brand in consulting, also in very much in audit and assurance and tax. So globally, we are among the biggest audit firms as well as assurance advisors. As far as consulting and advisory is concerned, we're very strong. We have very, very strong capability in things like business risk, in things like internal audit. We also have very strong capabilities now building up in the larger business consulting space, which would include data, technology, strategy, self, transformation of all forms, governance, which is something that this region really needs as it grows so fast, given it's a new place relatively when compared to some of the older regions. And then people, right? So people is where I kind of bring in that capability, but there's an extended team that does this work. We look at the people advisory and the people consulting is as three big buckets, right? So one is, are we ready for the future? Which is all about, is your operating model something that's designed to help you scale up and look at the challenges coming in, which means does the organization structure work in a way where functions and capabilities are interacting for the future? You have the skills which you can buy, borrow, bought, pays, and shaped in a way where you're again ready for what comes your way. Something you know, something you don't even know is coming, right? Are you also assessing people in the right way? So these are things that we actually do for clients to help them get to a stage with their workforce shaped that actually is future ready. That's one pillar. Second pillar, I mentioned business risk is something we do very well, and therefore there's a natural partnership within the firm to actually look at HR risk. So what is the risk that HR leaders and organizations are sitting on because of the virtue of having a lot of people who they employ, right? And this is in the form of culture to begin with, right? So culture eats strategy for the first common quote. But if you don't fix the way in which people work or what they work for, the value system, that can pretty much eat up an organization without even you knowing about it. And I'll just say, having worked with you and a few of your colleagues and people strong, I must say, one of the things I first picked up in the language was the culture, and a very strong one at that, which kind of really shows a lot of things about commitment and how people are treated, right? So kudos to you guys. And for me now in 13 years, it's easy to pick when people talk about an organization. So culture is a risk that you need to solve for. Whether you're paying your people in an equitable way, are you actually spending way more than you should be because the workforce is a significant costly? Or if you're really underpaying and not attracting the right skills, that is another risk kind of a coupled. You're paying up a lot of fines today in this region. For example, in the UAE, a lot of organizations are still paying fines for Emirate not being enough on the Emiratization front. I mean, there's one way of looking at it as a risk that you're paying, but actually it's a huge value to it in terms of how you can redo Emiratization to drive value for you. And we'll talk more about that. Now, lastly, the last pillar is actually the people experience itself, the people and the HR experience. Is your HR team, firstly, feeling like they're working in a leading HR organization, an organization that leads HR? I've had the privilege of doing that in a few of my initial organizations where we were making cutthroat, business advances to HR, right? And so how does your organization do that for yourself? So your HR team, your HR technologies, where again we'll talk about how empowering is an HR operating system or a HR authorities, a people OS, right? So that there's also performance management, learning, some of the core HR processes that need to be driven in the right way, which have changed. So how do you do that? And again, when I say how, there's the advice part, and then there's actually an implementation part, wherein our teams go sit with the client, work the cycle out, and help them see how it's done for 1 or 2 cycles, and then slowly retreat so that the clients can go on that path and then obviously use that way.
So on the last part, you worked in the Middle East, UK, Hong Kong, extensively. What have you seen? How have you seen this region change? And how are people receptive, not receptive? What are they receptive to? What are their top challenges that you feel the right orientations towards talent and people and culture can solve. As far as I remember, I mean, I've been Dubai is like my second word. I've been coming here very regularly since 2006, and I have seen that Dubai, in particular, change drastically and for the better. Each year, I see the infrastructure change, the landscape magically just totally transformed. But I've also noticed a sea change in the way people, especially the corporates, say. How has it? How what are your insights and observations into it? How what other challenges people are facing? How are you solving them? And where do you think it's? What do you think it's moving towards?
Okay, I think there's a brilliant question and really good observations on the region. I fully agree with as well. Um, it's now my home, but it's a very new home for me still. A year into the region, but I can already start sensing why you started off the podcast with this being the city of gold. This is a region of gold, if you ask me. I think
Black and the shiny bird.
absolutely right. So, well, it's a brilliant place to begin with. Firstly, the enterprise of this region has stunned the world and really focused on the attention. There's no wonder why expats from across the world are actually moving in to make this there. One, obviously, is the strength of the people here in the first place. The way they've actually gone from where they were as recently as 1950s to actually setting what they've set up in this shorter span of time. Right? It's obviously taken the world by storm. Now, that has happened through sheer enterprise. There's obviously huge credit to the fact that there's a huge stability in government policies and some of those things. How I see the region is that they really seek out good talent because they know that they can root. They have the infrastructure, they have the monetary backing to actually make the best happen for their organizations. So it's very important to kind of understand what drives change here, therefore. So this is a region that's capable of moving from 0 to 10 to 100 in a very short span of time, right? So they don't need to go to 1, 2, 3, and then 10, and then so on. So when they started off, they probably were not aware of what policies, procedures, what kind of HR elements need to be there in place. Today, that's the conversation. But very soon, they're already saying, get me the best AI-driven HR technology. I mean, they're behind it to the extent where this country has ministries for artificial intelligence, driving it as a national agenda. And the government drives private more than the other way in terms of thinking, which is fascinating. Right? So the region needs the best. That's how I would summarize it. The best of what the world can do in an HR space, for example. So which is why the skills-based conversation is huge, which is why the AI conversation is huge and people are doing it. So some of the biggest names that we see, organizations in the region, be it to the UAE, Saudi Arabia, wherever you ask, they're all doing big changes in technology.
So, while staying on the topic of Middle East, how do you see that economy for talent reward?
Right.
I've been looking at a lot of trends. The world is moving towards from a role-based organization to a skill-based organization. How do Gen Zs fit it? How does technology play a part in stitching up the organization for culture, people, and processes? And most importantly, what do you think enterprises need
Yep.
to be able to sustain this growth
Yep.
and focus on people?
Okay. So I think we're getting now very serious with the conversation which is required, because I mean one of the reasons why we caught up was to also let a lot of people know some of the leading insights on this deep, right? So great question. I'll spend a few minutes just decluttering this. Firstly, what are the trends that are really driving change? One is obviously the fact that there's a macroeconomic shift overall in both. It's more about what kind of products and services are actually being invested for by customers, but also there is a shift in, say, certain geopolitics itself. Okay, the way the nations are coming together to interact. So there was globalization for a long time. That's now changing slightly with actually localization, global and local localization, right? So both those trends impacting. This is very high level start to the conversation, but I'm going to go deeper. What has happened is the young generation that's coming, they have very different requirements from the work environment. Um, Loyalty to an organization, for example, is not so much a value anymore. Aspirations are more about development, variety, and what they can actually get out of this work life, as opposed to stability, as just income growth and some of those aspects. So the what people expect from both organizations as a customer as well as an employee has changed big time. Right? The way they expect it is also changed big time. So it's no more a standard traditional route of getting information or getting services. People want to be omni serviced. They want to do something on their phone and they're actually walking to a store. They just want the continuity of that. It's their omni-channel experience, right? And as an employee too, I want a kind of a flexibility around what I'm getting from my organization in terms, be it learning, be it growth, be it visibility to the world, and so on and so forth. It's very different. Um, to the technology, like you mentioned, the fact that today we have data that can actually cut through the smallest of details, which is why the world of skills has actually emerged. So 5 years ago, 10 years ago, we were talking the language of competencies. We were talking the language of roles. There was no way one could actually break it down further to say what is the building block of this activity, this task. Today we know it is a skill. I mean, if you see what is a competency technically, it's a skill plus a knowledge and an attitude. A knowledge and an attitude continue to be important elements, but to do get something done, what you primarily need is a skill. The rest of it fits into a larger scheme of things. Now, what has that done? That has helped people really move between tasks as opposed to stick to roles. So today I'm doing certain things which a particular skill of mine needs. Tomorrow I remove. Right? I'm working with multiple managers to solve for different issues in the course of a job. And therefore my career is way more navigatable across. It's become really opened up. The third important element that has come in is the ecosystem of organizations. So no more is it like, okay, I work for Grant Thornton, I'm not going to think beyond Grant Thornton anymore. So I'm not even talking about a case of a moonlighting. What I'm actually talking about is collaboration between organizations. We together have attended multiple client meetings as people from and Grant Thornton. And the clients are actually very open to that. Yesterday, I was working with a particular client where one particular organization is helping them with compensation ranges. I am helping them with the job gradients. And we actually got on a call, and the client was surprised. Like, do consultants actually work together? Even that's the world has changed. We have to work together, right? So therefore, there is now a multi-company, multi-skill pods that are getting formed to solve for specific problems, and then people just move on. They come together and they move on, right? Few organizations preempted this globally, and now it's coming to the Middle East. Globally, if you take, say, a Spotify or an ING for that matter, were the first to move to the squads and tribes concept of workflows and used skill as the baseline to do it. Then some larger global organizations started doing it. Today, the government in the UAE is actually taking notice. The federal authorities in terms of the human resources or other organizations want to know how can this actually happen for their people. And therefore, I'm sure some of the larger private organizations will also follow the same route. Also, because you see, that's how they're built. They have multiple industries that people work on. And they're very collaborative with their friends who also run similar organizations, right? So the Middle East is poised for change as far as skills-based organization building is concerned. I'll pause. I mean, if you had specific question, there's more to talk about it, obviously.
No, we did some fantastic work together. We are doing some fantastic work together. And for our listeners, Grant Thornton and Be Strong are in a strategic collaboration to help service the region with skills and talent based operating system, which includes years of expertise, technical expertise and subject matter expertise that People Strong brings in, consulting experience from Grant Thornton, and of course the technology that stitches it all together. We also worked very recently on research/insights ebook.
Absolutely.
Would you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. And that was a great piece of collaboration. It was very enjoyable working with you and your team to build this. And my team also was very happy building the research for it. So we in People Advisory inside of Grand Thornton in the UAE worked with People Strong to release this ebook. It's called The Essential Playbook to Build a Skills-Focused Organization. So this is really about the same things we just discussed. What has led to this change? How do you go ahead and build a skills-based organization? The most important part that we want to cover through this book is the fact that look, everyone can talk about a skills-based organization or try and experiment with a particular system that just does it. Some have done it very well and have actually gone to the depths, and that's because there are seven main learnings that we think are important when one goes on a journey of building a skills-focused organization. The first one is the fact that, and this you can think of each of these seven as enablers, right? So the first one is the fact that your organization structure itself needs to be in a matrix format. You can't have silos and ivory towers which just work within themselves. If you want to run a skills-based organization, people should be able to report into and move with multiple others. So it's flat, but also it's matrix, so that there's fair amount of collaboration. Two, the governance and the decision rights around doing this need to be very clear and laid down. So we speak of SOPs, delegations of authority and so on. This is a bit more than that. This requires almost a mechanism which ensures that all of this is held together because of the amount of change that's involved. It's easy to get lost if some people don't comply with certain ways in which resources exchanged based on skills, for example. Performance management needs to be rapid. No more waiting for a quarter or a whole half year to say, okay, you did well. I did a task today, I'm moving on to something else altogether tomorrow. Can I get a quick check-in to say, was I good? Will you work with me again? That's it. 2 questions. That's it, right? And a compilation of answers to those questions and some qualitative comments actually makes for very powerful reading at the end of the quarter, as opposed to one person sitting and writing it. 4, and something very ignored, what about cost centers? Right? In a skills-based organization, I've used people for their skills for a particular task. They move on, obviously, like I said, to another task or a project. Will you charge their salary cost back to the same old cost center and then recon differently? That's going to be tough. So how do you actually work with finance on a real-time basis to track whose effort is spent where, so that your right numbers can come out in terms of your profitabilities, in terms just financials, right? To say how efficient was this project or task. And fifth one, learning, and it's a big change. This is a big one. And again, this. You've done a lot of good work on this part. Can I make learning bite-sized? Can I now give the employees an opportunity to learn from wherever they want to, however they want, as opposed to saying, come to this class today or do this course now? Can I read an article, see a video at the just in time, in the flow of work? So I'm on a process, on a task. I hit a roadblock. Can something pop up and help me with what I need to? And that's changing with learning experience platforms, self-driven learning groups, curating some of this and bringing it all together. So that's one. Last 2. So I think one is to do with just the Uberization, the resource exchange itself. So does the talent OS, as we call it, enable me to see who's available talent marketplace of sorts, internally, externally, and pull and track who the skill match? AI is playing a big role here to,
I think the skill gap analysis is the biggest thing
by far.
enterprises can do.
By far today, biggest contribution of AI to HR, in my opinion, is this job skill match or task skill match to the people. To be able to go through someone's experiences, and not just their given CV, but let's say their online presence and all of it put together, and to actually build a picture to say, this is what it is, and this matches your task requirement by so much percentage, is probably the biggest thing. It's actually correct. And that can now be automated, right, as we know. And lastly, I think the classic, and we should not ever mention it, but we need to change management, culture, communications, getting the hearts and minds on this journey. Otherwise, there's no change, right? You can have the best skills-based organization, but if no one's really wanting to do it, I think we're going to cap it. So those were the 7 things, basically.
Thanks for summarizing it beautifully, Nishanth. You can get your copy of the report with the QR by scanning the QR code on the screen, and we'll send you a complimentary copy post that. So, AI. I don't think there's any podcast in the world which is complete without discussing the buzzword of the century, which is AI. But jokes apart, how do you see AI evolving from a use case of people and talent, of HR use case? How do you think we are ready to implement these use cases for outcomes and not just internal pressure? Do you think? We obviously have as a technology there. I worked on the world's first, or rather Asia's first HR framework for Gen AI, and we recently launched our multi-agent architecture for AX. So we as technology players have done our part. What do you feel is going to be the adoption and success? Of which areas are going to shine through amongst the plan?
Right. Oh, I think great question. I whenever I'm faced with this question on AI, what I try and do is opposite of what a lot of people do, which is suddenly become experts in the topic. I am not, and I'll be open about it. But I do, and Thornton as well does have a lot of viewpoint around this, and we do work on this. Which is there are a few parts, right? One is firstly from a people perspective. There are 2 very different angles to how what AI means. One is we all are using it in our personal lives, right? I had to write something long. I went to it last. I had to make a video for my rap. I asked AI to create it because I didn't have time to shoot it. Sometimes I asked to write a whole song and I like, no, I'll write it better, right?
Now your iPhone has Siri, which is AI.
Exactly, right. So I'm now looking for ideas, helping it to do a lot of my tasks on the site. How much of that can I bring to my organization as an employee, any employee, right? An employee is energized by an organization that gives him or her something better than what they can actually do in their personal lives. And that happens through democratization of the whole process. So that's how we started doing so much better at communications, at all the technologies that we use, which are not AI way. When people started bringing it on, so people were using Facebook in their real lives. Suddenly, organizations realized that that's a great way to get forums, employee forums happening. So we started having exactly Facebook-like looking forums with notifications. Now you can start doing that about AI, right? So how Copilot helps you design things and so on, when people can come in and actually do that, right? Now, that's one part. The second part is the use of AI tools in day-to-day HR work, right? So obviously it starts off with the chatbot. Now, challenges with the chatbot is it can be intuitive, it can learn and with experiences, but there's a huge element of garbage in there out still. A lot of people hallucinations. A lot of people don't use chatbots simply because they know they're not going to get what they want. And people actually think that, oh, my employees don't have problems anymore, or my customers don't have problems anymore, because they actually think that, look, we introduced the chatbot and issues are solved. They would even use the chatbot for lesser. That's because they just went on to another service provider altogether. So it's not so much the help desk element, which I think I look at it as one for strategic elements like matching the job and the skill, which I spoke about. Anywhere where AI is able to use a bunch of information to bring out better results. For example, let's say I load into the AI the history of my organization's structure and workforce numbers and skills in terms of what existed in the past. And I let it predict based on my business scenarios in terms of whether I'm growing in one direction vertically, horizontally, organically, inorganically. I let it come back to me and say these are models that you can actually play with for your workforce. That's powerful. And I'm sure an AI can do that better and better as we go forward, right? So these are areas where I would like to actually use it. I would like to use AI to understand the evolving law and the regulatory landscape to tell me what all can I really do from a people perspective that is within the law, but still helping my people become better. in terms of offering them potentially alternate career opportunities for them to come back and so on. So if an AI can actually grasp that detail for me very quickly, as opposed to me going through pages of the law. So stuff like that, right? Lastly, I think one of the thought leaderships we are working on in writing content is called AI versus intern. In terms of adopting AI, the approach to use, you look at it as 1,000 interns coming in will suddenly scale up faster than those 1,000 interns. So how do you just start this career path? So how do you onboard an AI? Show the AI around the organization with this orientation, right? And then how does it go from there? So that's the other interesting piece you're working on. So, I mean, it's really evolving now, and we'll all just soon start making it a household thing.
That'd be interesting to see beyond the obvious apprehensions of AI impacting job losses. Yeah. How can you make AI work? Will it get how many jobs can it reduce? What kind of tangible benefits can it get? Can you get AI to write those to your employee policies, etc., etc., etc. I think there is still, and this is where probably folks like you and I will come into the picture, where we actually show HR, the people leaders, of what can be done and what can be done now versus what can be done in the future, and help them adopt the right use.
So absolutely.
That's something we'll have to jam together on. Moving on. So in the most intimate conversations we have with CHROs and people, the HR function, what I've observed is, at least earlier, HR did not have a strategic seat on the table with the CEO as far as policy and the decisions of the business were concerned.
Sure.
How have you? I know it has changed, but
Yeah.
how have you seen it change? Does the HR is the HR talent, the people, the number one priority of the CEO, at least the top three priorities of the CEO to?
It is. And I think it has always been. The big difference has been that oftentimes the business leaders typically take charge of some of those people agendas themselves, as opposed to placing it with an umbrella called HR. And that's been the shift. So it's more for me the way that I think the nomenclature and the responsibility. I'll tell you why. Because everyone thinks they can do HR. We are all leaders. We all have peers. So we all can draw a structure for our peers. We all interview for our peers. So we all think that, okay, this is what HR does. So the shift has been thanks to some very, very remarkable HR leaders and thought leaders in the space of HR who made that shift happen over many years. I was, thankfully, even 13 years back when I started, the shift had already started happening big time. I was very, very lucky to grow under the HR leaders who made serious business shifts through people models. So, as an example would be in the insurance industry, moving from a tied model of certain people recruiting agents for distributing the insurance network, an HR leader thought of how an agency partnership model might actually work, where you suddenly start including agents in your payroll, part-time, times regulations, but who could then go and build an entire big agency of further agents who would go and do the selling and distribution of the insurance policies. So, changed remarkably. The idea came from an HR leader. It was a people change. So, in the services industries, you see even more empowered HR decision makers. In the manufacturing and in the non-services side of things, it's a slightly different story, but it's equally important as well. So people-driven businesses find it easier to make that shit. Now, what is helping this make this better is the fact that value can be tracked today, right? So you now have a set of very strong financial and non-financial metrics. We were speaking about it at the break, right? In terms of how you as a marketing head actually can easily get involved and have visibility of sales numbers. I'll let you speak about that. But an HR head can do the same thing. I mean, there is no challenge from an HR perspective to actually have an initiative and track the value of what that gave to the organization from a revenue, profitability, scalability, sustainability. There are a few other elements that you can look at. Risk reduction. You can look at resilience in the organization being built up. You can measure each of these things now. And that's something an HR head can easily do and will further cement that seat on the strategy.
Absolutely. And I see HR and marketing playing an even important role than ever before, than creating brands, to getting the right people, to actually helping shape the culture and the experience inside and out, inside and out. That's what you call on brand, right?
Yeah.
Um, I am of a firm belief that no marketer and no marketing team today can shy away from owning revenue,
Right.
and growth, or not taking those numbers at their KPIs. I mean, I've been doing it all throughout my career. Fortunately, unfortunately, we've become good at it. Beyond just the numbers, I think being on brand, creating the right employer value proposition is communicating the ethos and the essence of
Both outside and inside.
outside and inside is very important. Even if you look at experience, so what you call customer experience is for HR employee experience, and for marketing it's what customers expect as a journey across all touch points. So I think it's not about having a seat at the table. If in the right organization, you'd already be there
Be there.
and being asked the right questions on what new can you do for me this year. So that was a fantastic discussion on that. So we've talked a lot about success, but rarely in a panel discussion
Yes.
or a round table do we ever talk about failures. Let's change that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, in your journey across your career, what were your failures? What did you learn from it?
Yeah.
And what would you advise your peers, even people leaders, on things to watch out for, or things to avoid, or as line mines not to step on?
So I think, great question. Put me on the hot seat now.
Are you already were?
Quite a few who were watching, sorry, and we were talking about our shared failures. But look, I think failure is a badge, like you say, right? You learn so much more. You learn by doing, you learn by not doing, you learn by succeeding, by observing, you learn by succeeding, but you learn the most by failing, actually. And I think my learning has been that landmines will be there and you will step on. But what matters is how do you actually manage that step and the impact of that landmine on everything else. And this really comes down to the single facet of what I call, and what's come to be known as behavioral change management, right? So this is all about understanding your stakeholders of anything that you do, of being mindful of the fact that they're all human beings, right?
True.
And addressing them as human beings in any change, in any transformation, in any journey that you or initiative you undertake. If you come with an attitude that this is me, this is going to get me success, and I'm going to maraud through people who are going to be impacted in less or more ways, just to ensure that I get a credit and end up it saying I've done it, that's already a failed start. You need to really dig deep, understand what's in it for each human being, leader, non-leader, impacted by this, right? And actually play it back and have those conversations and be ready to change yourselves as well. You can't say this is exactly the vision and I'll only do this. It has to go through like a rigor. Every other human being was impacted and the essence of them coming into it and change the track to eventually reach something common. And it requires education. This needs the whole cycle, right? Awareness, interest, and there's some type of negative interest, there's positive interest. So people interested in change doesn't necessarily mean they want to do it. There are a lot of people interested in ensuring it doesn't happen, right? There's awareness, there's interest, there's trial, which is all about people actually feeling it, touching and feeling that change in their real lives. Then there's adoption. And the vision of that change can change through this cycle. This is the classic AIDS cycle. Everyone uses it. So, making it known, making it real, making it stick is what I would say failures have all been about. So where I personally and in my professional life, the multiple projects that you had rollbacks on, failures on, have all been about bad change. And they've learned. And in a way, it's been good that they've rolled back and failed, because what that does is it gives the whole team an opportunity to actually redo the things in the right way. So after doing 12 months of something with zero adoption, you go back and you bring those people who not adopted it to the table and says, "Yes, sorry, you failed, but we can't just stay where we are. We need to go forward somehow." So what do you suggest now? Like,
So I think there's one very important bit. I mean, speaking personally, I know you are the guest, but I'd like to share something. I've always considered myself extremely lucky. Like pod zone child, I failed. Let's say if I failed 100 times, I would have definitely failed 1,000 more.
yeah,
But I call myself a lucky child because I somehow was able to avoid it. And then once I grew up, I started thinking, I think it's all about culture that stays with you throughout your life. So when your parents give you the right values to not make the obvious mistakes, to when they forgive you for making those mistakes, what you learn from it not to repeat those mistakes and how to avoid them in the future. And then you go into an organization where you are then kind of the mentor slash parent, and you give the right environment for others
to expect.
the right values, the right guardrails for people to experiment yet avoid failures, and even if they fail in measurable failures. I think that stays with you and helps us. So culture is extremely important. By being in an organization which allow you to fail and doesn't start pointing fingers the moment something the shit hits the fan is extremely important.
Fully.
I guess our generation wasn't that lucky, but I'm pretty sure we will make it easier for the next generation.
I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So that brings us to the end of our podcast. I had fun, and I'm pretty
I loved it. Loved it. Yeah, it was great.
right, and I'm pretty sure the audience was able to get some real nuggets of wisdom from it. But what next? So, People Strong, Grant Thornton. What can the audience expect from us in the next 3 to 4 months?
No, I'm glad you brought this up as the finishing question, and I think it's good to leave the audience who's lasted so far, if they have, on the podcast. I hope, I'm sure they have, with the thought of what's next. So, like I said, I think Grand Thornton UAE, we were very happy with the ebook that we co-wrote with People Strong on skills-based organization, and I feel I'm getting a lot of very positive reviews from people who read it so far. So happy about that. I definitely think we should collaborate more. One of the things we've already discussed, Amit, is the fact that we will come up with very specific, dedicated research for this region, which leaders in this region can actually use from a talent perspective, from a people perspective, workforce perspective.
And benchmark it against the best in the industry.
Exactly, right? So, and that's something I'm sure they love, and that's coming very soon. We also have started discussing about how a very specific discussion session could actually be organized for some of the leading CXOs, okay? Where we can actually bring those voices together in a forum and actually have the best exchange of thoughts possible, I believe.
Looks like we have our hands full. And to our lovely audience, thank you so much for being so patient. I had a great time talking to Nish on and off the cameras. He's a fantastic guy. Trust my word on it. And together we're going to do something really exciting in the next few months. Watch out this space for more.